Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Churn Radar webinar. We're going to have a really awesome time today going over health scoring, right? One of the things that we want to do is be able to see what our customers are doing and when and how well are they doing, who's ripe for expansion, who's ripe for case studies, who's ripe for referrals, all of those things. And that is what we're going to dive into today. So what I want to do is I want to start with a question before we get into what you're actually going to get out of today and get into the actual teaching part of this. So I want to start with a question. How do you know which of your customers is about to churn? So a lot of times, like, we think about who are our top 3 customers, who's not using it, who's not logging in, things like that, right? But sometimes there's some silent things that are happening with the client that can lead to churn. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to help surface those things. But, when you sit with that question, one of the things that happens is, like, most founders, they care about this. They want to figure out who it is that's going to churn in their business, like who's having some problems, who's not really using it the best. But the thing is that they don't really have a system to be able to show them these things, or their team doesn't have a system to be able to show them these things. And so they're kind of just flying blind or just going with gut feeling on who they think is doing well and who isn't. And when we put data behind that is where it could really uncover things. And I have an example that I'm going to show in a little bit that'll really show you guys, like, what does it look like when we think somebody is doing really well because we see them logging in, we see them using it, they're not opening any tickets, they don't need support from our team, but there still is a problem there. So we're going to actually dive into all of that today. So when I think about this, we have founders in about 3 different camps, right? It's either you've gone out and you're, like, brand new to SaaS. You vibe coded an app. You have no customers right now, but you're, like, watching this because you want to figure out, how do I actually go out and take customers from where they come in to our product and take them to success, right? Help them grow their business using our product and stick around for a long time. Or you have some traction, you have a few customers, you don't want to backslide, you don't want to lose anybody that you have. Or you're kind of at scale. You're a SaaS company that's been around for a little while. You have a couple customers, a couple hundred customers maybe, but you're in this zone where churn kind of feels sudden. You're like, man, I didn't think they were going to churn. Like, where did that even come from? Like, or you think your team isn't paying attention. If you do have a customer success team, you're like, I feel like they're always blindsided by churn, or something always surprises them. Like, why can't they ever get ahead of these things? And why are we having conversations right when the customer is churning compared to months ago when they probably ran into this problem that got them there in the first place? So those are kind of the 3 different camps that I think about. When you think about this question, how do you know which of your customers is about to churn? Most of the time when I talk to founders, they don't know what that answer is. And so that's what we're going to help solve today. So here's what you guys are going to leave today's webinar with. By the end of this, you'll have a really clear health score tracker that you will be able to use, either deploy yourself or have your team deploy. It's a really simple calculator and a really simple tracker on the health score of your customers. There's going to be a couple things that you're going to fill in, and we'll talk through all of those in just a little bit, and I'll show you an example of what it looks like. But you'll leave here with something you can fill in today and have a really clear idea and picture of how each of your customers is doing and who needs the team's attention. Who does the team need to be calling proactively, and what can we get ahead of now versus having a conversation later on in the future when churn becomes real for them. All right, so with that, here's what we're going to do. Churn comes down to 2 questions, okay? We could all track 40,000 things inside of our application, right? We can track every time they log in, every time they go view a page, every time they click on this or open this or download this, all of those things. We can track so many things within any of our products. But it really only comes down to two things, 2 questions that we need to ask ourselves based on the customer's interaction with our product. Are they getting value, and are they still showing up? Okay, those are the 2 questions that we need to answer for every customer. Everything else is a distraction until we get those 2 really dialed in. Okay, are they getting value, and are they still showing up? All right. Now, the other thing to think about too is that adopted doesn't mean activated. A lot of times we think about clients that are using our product and we're like, oh, if they're logging in and they're clicking on this and they're clicking on that, they're fine. They're getting value. Not necessarily. That just means they've adopted the product. They're using the product. They log in, they poke around. 6 months later, they churn, and you're like, what happened? They were logging in on a regular basis. Why did they still churn, right? There was no signals that you thought that were happening that made it seem like they were going to churn. They were adopted, not activated. Activated is when they are getting wins from the product. They are getting the win that the product promises to deliver. That's why speed and time to first value is so important, because we want to make sure that they're getting value from the product, and it's not just something that they're using, poking around in, and just logging in on a regular basis and maybe downloading a report or whatever. Are they using the actual things that are going to drive value inside of the product and drive value into their business? So that's what we need to make sure of, and that's what we're going to help uncover as we go through this. Let's talk through that a little bit deeper when we talk about the health grid. So I'm going to draw this out for you guys so that you can kind of take a look at this and see, exactly what I'm talking about when I mean somebody's logging in frequently, but they're not actually using any of the value drivers within the product to get what they need out of it and get the value that they purchased it for, to make it a no-brainer to stick around. So let's actually take a look at this really quick. So there's two things, right? So we look at this health grid. There's two things. There's value and there's frequency, okay? Though both of those things are important. Are they getting value? Are they using high value features of our product? And are they using it frequently? So there's actually 4 different segments of customers that you could look at here. The first one we have what we call the sleepers. Okay, the sleepers are our high value. Okay, so they're using the really good features in our product that are going to drive the value for their business. But they're going quiet. Their frequency is low, right? So they're going quiet. These are ripe for you guys to do proactive check-ins. You got to get ahead of this, okay? Anybody that's in this sleeper camp, got to get ahead of it. Got to start talking to them quickly and soon, proactively. Get ahead of any of the problems, okay? Then you have your power users. They're on this side, other side of the spectrum, right? They're high value. They're using the high value drivers and features of the product. They are high frequency, so they're engaging often. These ones are your champions. These are the people that you need to be reaching out to for case studies. Okay, for referrals. And I spelled that wrong. But for referrals, and these are also the ones that you want to be on the lookout for expansion opportunities. These are going to be ripe for all of those things, okay? They're getting a lot of value out of it. They are high frequency, so they're touching it often. These are the ones that you guys really want to pay attention to. The other ones that we have here are going to be your at-risk customers, okay? These are low value. These are low frequency. And these ones, you got to act now. You got to save these ones. You got to get ahead of these. Like, somebody should be all over them. Reaching out by email, phone, text, send a carrier pigeon if you have to. Whatever you need to do to get in touch with these people, you got to get in touch with them. They're not engaging in any of the value driving features within your product, and they're also just not really logging in, right? This is almost the no-brainer section. Like, you see these and you're like, yep, I knew that. I know how to spot these guys very easily. Okay, and then the last one we have are the passengers. They're logging in, okay? High frequency, but they're not using any of the value drivers, which means they're not activated. We talked about it, activation versus adoption a little bit ago. These are the people that have adopted it but haven't really activated. They're not getting to the aha moment in your product to where they're like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. I know exactly what I'm paying for it. The risk here is that they're going to ask the question at some point, why am I paying? Why am I paying for this? Cool. I log in, I see a dashboard, I get a cool report, but like, is this actually driving forward the business? And is it helping me achieve my goals in the business? That's the question that they're going to be asking. Why am I paying for this? So these are the 4 quadrants that you want to pay attention to, because you have customers that are going to fall within each of these camps, okay? The goal is to catch them before they reach this section here, before they reach at risk. You want to catch them before they get there. and you want to move them up into this section here. We want power users, okay? Now, you're going to have some sleepers as well, which are getting value, and those are the ones that you just got to keep a pulse on. Stay on top of them, continue to reach out, and make sure that they have everything that they need because they're getting value. They're just not doing it frequently. And so we want to make sure that we have like that proactive check-in to help continue to move them forward. So that's the way that you want to think about these ones here. Okay, so that's where each of the camps that your customers can fall into. And so what I want to do now is talk about, all right, cool. We have all this information. Like think about where your customers fall. Like just take a second, kind of think about that. And what do we do now? So now that we know where they fall in each of these and how to categorize or segment each of our customers, we now have to think about how do we stop guessing where they're going to go in this, and how do we actually start putting a score around them to make sure that we are focused on the right ones and that we can see where they end up without having to use just our sentiment on what we think is going to be where they land in that grid, okay? So now we have to think about, well, how do we score this? So what we're going to do is we're going to turn those into a number. And that's what I'm going to teach you guys today, and also give you guys the tools to be able to go do for all of your customers, is how do we turn one of those health grid quadrants into a number, which then can be updated into a really simple green, yellow, and red. Okay, that your team or yourself can go through and figure out exactly where it is that each of these customers fall. And so that way you know what the next step is for them. So one thing we have to think about before we get into any of that is that not all usage is created equal. You know, one of the things I talked about earlier is adoption versus activation, right? We have different features in our product, and some of the features are just like the icing on the cake, and some of them are the core thing that's going to drive value for them. So when we think about scoring this and we think about scoring our customers, there's going to have to be weights that are added to each of these scores that we are creating. I'm going to show you guys how to think through some of that, as well as give you a formula to be able to capture all that and how do we turn that into a health score in just a second. So just think about that. Not all usage is created equal. Some of your best customers is who we want to model this after. So make sure you're thinking about your best customers. But we want to think about them, the things that they use, the frequency that they have, and kind of weigh that against what it is that we're going to track here in just a little bit. So there are going to be some things that we put in here into our health score that is going to either be a real fire sounding off the alarms, and you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, yeah, that's a problem. And there's going to be some where you're like, I don't think that's an issue. Like, why is that such a big deal? It all kind of comes together. Like there's going to be some signals that your customers have that are going to be like really, just really apparent to you as you look at it. And there's going to be some that are going to be super quiet and you're going to be like, wow, I didn't even realize that could go into that. So if we think about this, a customer that hasn't logged into to your product for 10 days, but they hit your core value feature every time that they log in, a little bit of a different story than somebody that's logging in on a regular basis, but they're not actually engaging in any of those big value driver features inside of your product. So that's where the weighting comes in, and that's where we need to make sure that we are looking at this from a standpoint of like not everything's going to be just very cut and dry. Like some of these things are going to be whispers. Some of these things are going to be very silent killers for these customers that are going to lead them over to churning. So if you could only watch one thing in your product, if you can only watch one feature within your product that you know drives value for your customers, you want to think about that. That's going to be your heaviest weighted signal, okay? So start thinking about that a little bit. If you could only watch one thing, what would it be? And is that the thing that drives value for them? Okay, that should be a little bit of a challenge for you because that's going to be our highest weighted signal here in just a little bit. So the third thing is that we're going to make all of this actionable. Okay. I said earlier that we're going to change this score, right? This score on 100, on a 0 to 100 scale into red, yellow, and green. So that way it's easy for your team to be able to monitor and say, cool, Today, I'm focused on calling all of my red customers, or I'm focused on all my yellow customers, or here's all my greens, everybody that's doing really well in there. That's going to help make it actionable for your team. If we just gave them a number, if we said, hey, this customer's a 55, they're going to say, cool, what does that mean? Have no clue. So we're going to make that really easy by making it actionable into red, yellow, and green so that they can go out and take action on all of that. All right, so we talked through all of this stuff. Now, I actually want to show you what an example of this looks like when we actually put it all together. So I have an example company that in this tracker that I'm going to show you here, and this is the tracker that you're going to get as well. I'm going to throw it in the chat for you so that way you can go and create a copy for yourself and start tracking these things. But here's an example that we're going to go through here. So I'm going to share this part of my screen, and let's dive into this here. Okay, so there's a couple things. This first tab here is the setup tab. This is where we're going to come in and be able to change our weights, change our signals, so you can change the name of the features and things like that that you want. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start this with a customer that kind of flies under the radar, okay? They're going to be somebody that they don't put any support tickets in. They don't ever really complain. They're not on anyone's watch list. Like, they are just like, anytime you see them, you're like, yeah, they're doing pretty good. They're logging in, they're getting in there. But when we score them, we're going to see what the data actually shows versus what the sentiment overall is, right? The customers that we typically focus on are the loudest ones, but sometimes it's the quietest ones that don't ever complain or have any issues that are going to be the ones that are going to end up in that passenger seat and are going to be the ones that eventually come around to say, what am I paying for? Why am I paying for this? So let's start with this customer here. Okay, here's the weights that we're going to start with. We're going to weigh last login at about 25%. We're going to weigh our core feature, one of our value driving features, at 35%. We're going to weigh feature 2 at 25 and feature 3 at 15. That's going to give us a total of 100. This is just for an example here, but you can change these weights if you need to. If you're like, hey, our product isn't really login heavy, right? Maybe it's a widget that lives on their website or whatever. And so like engagement with it is higher, is weighted higher than actual login. They never need to log in after they originally set it up. They just need to use it on a regular basis. Well, last login probably comes down to maybe 15%, and this can go up to 45%. So think about this for your business and think about what your best customers are doing in this situation. So we're going to leave these weights alone just for now, but the core active feature, which we're going to call feature 1 in this case, is going to be weighted the highest at 35%. That's the feature that when a customer is using it, that tells us that they're actually getting value and they're not just clicking around, okay? We want to make sure that they're getting value. All right, so if we come over to the dashboard page here, and this is so you can kind of understand the score right here and understand the ranges, as well as the guide around this too, so you can see that there. And like when you're actually going in and making these scores, you can see how it goes into the actual score ranges. All right, dashboard. Let's go in here. So company name, Fast Manufacturing, just a sample customer, point of contact, Sarah Mitchell here. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to also track when we last contacted them, because it's important for us to know as a team, when's the last time we've had a really meaningful interaction with this customer, okay? Not just they reached out and we just said hi, or we said, happy 4th of July, or whatever the case may be, but like when's the last time we had a meaningful conversation with them? And you want to make sure that you put this in here, because this is important for us to keep track of. Not only the features, but when's the last time that we talked to them? So let's say that last time we talked to Sarah was in the last 30 days. Great. All right, last login. So we go through, we look in the product, and we figure out, all right, when's the last time that Sarah has logged into the product? Well, let's say, like I said earlier in this example, this is somebody that logs in pretty frequently and is pretty engaged with the product. And so we want to be able to show that. So we're going to show last login. We're going to say that they're engaged. Last login is in the last 4 to 7 days. Okay. Feature 1. This is our core activation feature. Remember, here's where it gets interesting. Like the feature that matters most is the one that she tells us she's actually getting value from, but let's just say she hasn't actually touched that feature within the last like 10 days or so, right? So we'll put her at risk 8 to 14 days since the last time that she's engaged with that. And you'll see that drops the score down to 22 just by putting in that. So she's logging in, she's engaged, she logged in within the last 7 days, But the core thing that's driving value into her business, 10 days ago is the last time she used it, 8 to 14 days. She's at risk there. All right, feature 2. So she's using it. Okay, she's using feature 2. She's engaged. She's used it more frequently than feature 1. So we're going to put her in there at the engaged 4 to 7 days. So she's using something, right? She's not logging in for no reason. She logged in, she used feature 2, but didn't use feature 1, which is the main value driver. So we have her as engaged 4 to 7 days there. Now, feature 3. Let's say that she just recently used that, right? Like, let's say she didn't need to log in to use it. It's kind of like an automated thing. Maybe it's an agent. Maybe it's a chatbot. Maybe it's something that just runs somewhere else, right? And provides her with the value without her needing to log in and interact with it. But it sent her the thing that, or she interacted with it, or it sent her the thing that she needed. So let's just say that that one is active in the last 0 to 30 days. So what you can see here is that, like, now that signal, again, this feature only weighs 15% in everything that we're doing. So she recently used it or recently interacted with it or recently interacted with her to bring her some kind of value, but it's not the main value driver. So that brought her score to 52, and she's yellow there. So while we could have looked at the surface and we're like, well, she's logging in frequently, like everything should be good, right? She logged in the last 4 to 7 days. I contacted her in the last 30 days. She should be pretty solid. She's green. And most customer success people or founders will think about that and they'll be like, yeah, she's totally fine. She's doing great. I just talked to her recently. I saw that she recently logged in, and at a glance, she's doing awesome. But if we look at the data, she's yellow. She's not using the main things that are driving value to her business and the reason why she bought this. So what do we do with this, right? When it's yellow, that means that we got to get in front of Sarah quickly. We got to get in touch with her. We got to find out what it is that they're trying to do in the business. Like, what are their goals? What are their aspirations in the business that they are trying to achieve, so that we can help figure out how do we drive her into the value side of our product to make sure that she can actually go out and achieve those goals using our product. So we need to know, like, is there friction? Did something break? Did they run into a bug? Did they forget that that feature existed? Did we miss it in onboarding? Like, what happened? Did we not show them the full value of that feature? Like, why are they not using it? So like I said earlier, without a health score, this customer would look perfectly fine. With a health score, we can uncover, all right, there are some areas of opportunities here that we need to get in touch with her about and make sure that she's good to go. So that's the value of having a health score based on the main value drivers, weighted correctly based on your features, but also tracking the last time that they logged in, if that's something that's a big deal for your guys' product specifically. So this is what you guys are going to get. This is the health score tracker there's a link to this Google Drive, this Google Sheet that you guys can go and download and make a copy of, so that way you can take a look at it and start filling this out for your team. Now, there's more to this, right? Like, I'll kind of explain it here in a second. Like, where do we go from here? This is kind of the first step in making sure that we can start having visibility in this area. But that's going to be your health tracker for you guys to have. The second step, where you take this from here, is you could do one of two things. You could go out and build your own health score within your CRM, which is what I highly recommend doing, right? Building this out inside of your CRM after you have some reps in it with the sheet. Play around with the weights, play around with all the different calculations and everything in there. Then move it into your CRM, so that way you have it in one centralized place for your team. And then what I would do is start bringing in the data automatically. So once you've proven that, okay, this health score is weighted correctly, it shows who of our customers is actually healthy, and it all makes sense, then what I would start doing is then figuring out, how do we automate the data? How do we start bringing in the usage around feature 1, the usage around logins, the usage around feature 2 and 3 from our product into our CRM, into properties that can do these calculations for us. So for example, if you're using HubSpot, you can go through and basically create properties for each of these things, have the API from your product push that information in daily, so that way every morning your customer success team can have a dashboard built that shows them who are their greens, who are their reds, who are their yellows based on this weight. And so it puts them in a position to stop looking for work, and the work just shows up for them every morning. They know exactly who they need to call. They know exactly who they need to get in touch with, and they know exactly why they need to get in touch with them. What are they not using? What are they not doing? So that way they can get ahead of the curve and make sure that they are not ones that are going to be churning. So use this tracker to help get started. Figure out a way to then get it into your CRM or something that your customer success team or yourself is using on a regular basis, and then figure out, how do we automate this? How do we get this information in automatically so that we're not having to do this manually every single week as we're updating this tracker and this Google Sheet? Okay, it's kind of like the way that you want to think about this. So one of the things to think about is that this is just the foundation, okay? Having a health score is just the foundation to making sure that you guys have a really healthy handle and outlook on all the customers that you guys have inside of your book of business. What we're offering here at SaaS Logics with our CS engine offering is we go further than that, right? So we'll actually set this up in your CRM. We'll make sure that we get any help from your development team that you need to be able to get all of the data automated into the CRM, as well as build out other dashboards for all the KPIs that we need to be tracking inside of customer success. So while this is kind of the first piece in the foundation, if you need help building the rest of it out and need somebody to come in and lead customer success, regardless of if you have a head of customer success currently or you don't have anybody in that seat yet, we'd love to talk to you. And so there's going to be a link here for you guys to be able to go in and book a call with us and just kind of talk about where it is that you're currently at right now with customer success and see how we can help. We're here to kind of lead everything fully. Like, the idea is that if you need somebody to come in and lead it, or if you have somebody to lead it, but they're kind of in that player coach role and there's things that they want to implement that they just don't have enough hands, insight, or strategy to implement, we can help with that. And that's exactly what I do with SaaS companies every single day. So we'd love to help you. Click the link and we can book out a call, understand where you guys currently are today, and figure out a plan to help move these things forward in customer success for you. Okay. One of the things that we talk to founders about all the time is that a lot of times they think when it comes to growing the business and growing revenue, it all has to come from the front of the house. It all has to come from marketing and sales. But there's a lot of opportunities that things like the health score tracker bring up for expansion and generating revenue rather than just keeping the revenue. A lot of people think of customer success as, oh, that's just the arm that helps us keep the customers. Well, it's actually an arm to help grow revenue. We just have to make sure that we have visibility and we have the actions and the strategies in place to be able to go out and do that. All right, so I hope this was super helpful for you guys. This was the Churn Radar to help get you guys started with a really simple way to health score and track how your customers are doing on your platform. Love to talk to you guys more if you guys want to get deeper into how we can help come into your business and help take your customer success side to a whole nother level.